appreciate you being here, because I know that you probably have much more interesting things to do this night, but we will try to do our best to, to make it a value conversation. So, well, Clarissa, I think in my case, I am from Brazil, and I covered for this project a project in the south of Brazil, which is a really, really, really big project, 7.5 gigawatt data center. It's something that I researched a lot before publishing, and I haven't found any data center with this size, and with all this energy needs. And this was sold to the population as a big tech investment, not a big tech, but a big technology investment, like all this idea that we usually have towards technology, that is a cool thing, like this is very cool. We will become a Silicon Valley in Brazil, like the city will become the Silicon Valley, the local Silicon Valley, and will bring a lot of development and a lot of jobs, and this is important. And this was the only information basically we have about the data center. And actually, what our coverage showed is that with this huge size of the data center, probably will come a huge impact also, no, because of the size of the data center. Even though they are promising to use like technologies that are environmental friendly and this type of things, the truth is that the size of the data center is so huge that it's impossible to not having a big impact. And what we discovered is that the local government, the state government, made an agreement with the company to facilitate all the license, even before making any environmental assessment to understand if this data center could impact or not local population and local environment. So I think we uncovered a really important point, that is the government was so anxious to receive the investment that ignored any possibility of impact. And this changed a lot the way that people are looking to the data center right now.
Okay, so it's like the promises, the gold and the glitz didn't really meet the resource impacts of the project. And Aramís, could you share a little bit about the project that you reported on, and to answer the question as well, what should the people have known that wasn't being said?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation and for this space. Well, greetings from Peru. It's really early here, but I'm with you in this in this space. And well, I think the Peruvian case was a bit different from Brazil, because here we didn't find a government strategy actively promoting data center in the same way. What we found in Peru was a newly created industry association that was positioning itself as the bridge between the government and the private sector. But the government is not, until now, is not like have an important role. Maybe this new government, we have a new government since last week. Probably they are going to change some stuff. And well, this industry association said that with the goal of turning Peru into a regional digital hub, that's the objective for making this organization. No? So our reporting asks a different question, no? If the industry is growing and these conversations are already happening, and where is the public oversight? What surprised us was that there was no specific environmental framework, no clear institutional responsibilities, and very limited public information about how this industry should be regulated. I asked to 5 or 6 government institutions, and they all have the same answer. We don't know anything about data centers, but data centers are increasing in some part of Lima. So that was uh, it was challenging writing about something that the government said, no, I don't have information, or I don't have anything about this topic. But I think silence also share a story. I mean, when you have silence from the government, you can write also what they said about with no's and what they don't have any information. So I think that was the focus on my story, you know, how the government say no, but at the same time there are this kind of private association and how the industry is growing in the last years, no?
Yeah. Here I was thinking in Malaysia, having like a government promise this AI fast track national plan was scary, but that's a very good point. When there is no plan, that might be scarier still. So again, for the both of you, jobs and economic growth were central promises in both Brazil and Peru. So when you examined those claims more closely, what did you actually find in terms of, yeah, that those jobs, that economic growth?
Well, from my side, Clarissa, I think we don't have the answers, you know, like the industry. And in this project specifically, I covered the company that is developing this project promised a huge number of jobs, but they don't disclose, for example, what type of jobs there will be, and you know, for how long they are jobs inside the data center industry, the technology industry, or they are like for the construction of the data center. This type of information they do not disclose, and we asked it many times for them. And this, I think this is a very important point, because it's a challenge for us as journalists to cover this specific industry, because they are not transparent at all. Like they do this promise with these big numbers, you know, like the investment amount or the jobs amount, and this sounds very impactful for public authorities and for population also. People, you know, feel like, oh, we will receive a big investment, a big job company, but we don't have information to, you know, to discuss these promises. And so what we discovered during the investigation, and with the debate that the investigation generated after the publication here in the south of Brazil, it really hit with very strong here in the south of Brazil, our investigation, because it really bring a lot of new information. And what we discover is that something that in other parts of the world is already clear, that data centers are not very intensive generating are not generating a lot of jobs inside the data center. The mostly part of the jobs are around the construction, and so after the data center is ready, you know, there is a few people that will be working inside. And I think the economic growth also, it seems that has a similar similar way to see, because, for example, I was reading that from this huge amount of investment that data centers promise to do in a certain area, mostly part of these investments is actually to buy machines, to buy the computers and all the technology, issues that they need, not it's not something that will generate development, economic development, because it's only machines that are, and those machines, for example, here in Brazil, we don't have this technology produced here. We would need, and this is something that I think it's important, because here in Brazil, the government, both the federal government and the local governments, as here in Rio Grande do Sul, in the south of Brazil, they are offering like tax benefits for the companies, for example. And they are saying that these tax benefits are justified because data centers will promote development. But in fact, the biggest amount of money that could generate development is this type of is the money that will be used to purchase the machines, the computers, all the tech, the microchips, and all these things that are needed to a data center work. So, in fact, what is something that is not being, the governments are not doing here, is to, for example, to create a policy that could develop this type of initiative here. Like, okay, we want data centers, and because they could generate development. Okay, but we will also, create policies to develop all this sector that can sell, technology to data centers to work and generate jobs, regular jobs. People will be there for a long time, and this is not happening. So I think this is, the difference between the promise and the reality.
Thank you. And Aramís?
Yeah, actually, in the case of Peru, economic growth was certainly part of the conversation. Industry representative talk about attracting investment, positioning Peru as a regional digital hub. But actually, our report focused on what was missing from that conversation. While there was a lot of discussion about growth, there was very little discussion about environmental oversight, transparency, or which public institution would actually be responsible for regulating the sector. And there is clearly significant investment and strong commercial interest in this industry. So for us, for this investigation, the question wasn't whether economic growth was possible. It was whether the country was prepared to manage that growth responsibly. So there's no any institution or law or any document that it's going to manage or organize this sector. So I think it's important to see the whole components, and that's what I could find in Peru, no?
Right. So mostly focusing on growth and generating excitement. And as Naira said, the jobs that are promised mostly in construction, very little high skilled. And at the end of the day, who owns the tech that's being used? Tax benefits are not going back to the land that is powering those centers in the first place. So I think this question has already been covered a bit by the both of you in terms of like what obstacles you faced in navigating limited transparency, especially you, Aramís, in dealing with a government that doesn't even seem to have those discussions on regulating the industry to begin with. Is there anything else? And I guess on a hopeful note, like how did you manage to overcome those transparency issues?
Yeah, I could answer first, probably. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges was realizing that no single institution seemed to have a complete picture of the industry. They didn't have any information. So I feel freedom of information requests to 6 different public agencies, and most of them told me they had no specific regulations or oversight responsibilities for data centers. They didn't answer at all. And also they told me that they didn't know what data centers are, but there are companies working in Peru in this sector. And ironically, that lack of information became one of my biggest findings because from there, I combined official documents, peer reporting, and interviews to build the story ourselves. I focused on this lack of information just to make an article to show how the sector has no regulations, but it's growing. So it's like people say how these companies are working, but there is no any case, there is no any priority for the government to make the things. Even the environmental ministry was kind of fun because I started my story talking about how the environmental ministry use every day intelligence or artificial intelligence to make publicity of their work, but they don't know where this is the origin of this kind of technology, no? So it's kind of contradictory. So, well, I could say about the transparency in that way, no?
Yes, in my case, Clarissa, I think there is a very interesting point because, as I told before, the local government made an agreement with the company, and they in that moment when they signed this agreement, they invited all the journalists, and they published stories on the government website saying, look, we signed this agreement, it's nice, we will have a big data center here, it's the biggest one in South America, it's a lot of jobs, a lot of investment, and etc., etc., etc. And so I asked to read this agreement to the government, and they ignored my demand. So as Aramís, I've made some freedom of information requests here, and it took it like here in Brazil, we have a very strict legislation through freedom of information. And there are like deadlines you need to answer, and the government lost all the deadlines. Like it took much longer time than it would be acceptable. And finally, they only delivered to me the agreement when I told them that we will go to the justice. I will sue the government if they didn't, if they don't deliver me the agreement. So finally, they delivered, and this in this agreement is where we actually found the information that the government is offering. Well, agreed to offer tax benefits to the company, and also to facilitate all the licensing process, like without the most complex and deep assessments, environmental assessments that would be the logical thing to expect as the project is so big as it is.
Right, right. So on one hand, you've got a government that's promising a lot and just refusing to share their homework or what's backing those claims. And when they do, there's no environmental assessment. I love the fact that you threatened to do a lawsuit. And Aramis, you painted a picture based on everything that was missing, kind of like building one out of those gaps that should have been there. So just to get a little bit more on ground, a lot of the communities that you've spoken to were not consulted, had very little information. How did, hang on, how did you, did they know what was happening and what concerns did they bring up the most?
Oh, okay. I could answer Naira first, probably. Okay, in Peru, actually my reporting had a different focus. I wasn't investigating community consultation directly. Instead, I was looking at regulation and transparency. But during my fieldwork, one thing that stood out was the largest data centers are located in industrial areas rather than residential neighborhoods. They are not very visible, and I think that contributes to how little public awareness there is about this infrastructure. No, I didn't interview nearby residents because that wasn't the focus of my investigation, but I think transparency is the first step. It's difficult for communities to participate in decisions about infrastructure of that data center if they don't even know it exists or how it's being regulated. So I think it's a first step to show there's no transparency, and then people could interested in this topic. It's what happened in Chile. I think there are kind of similarities in Chile, Peru, even Brazil, because in Peru it was created an association that is the same that happened in Chile and even in Brazil. And in Peru, they show an example these countries as how Peru could grow. So probably in the future, the communities are going to have more information to demand what data centers are doing around their neighborhoods, no?
Yes, well, here in Brazil, it's the same, Aramis. People are really not aware about what is happening. Actually, usually us, the reporters, need to tell people, like we are here because we know that a data center will be built here, and we need to explain what a data center is because people don't know that a data center is coming, don't know what is a data center. So it's something that is really strange for us, no, because we really need to explain to people. I covered other data centers projects in this last 6 months, and in all the cases, I needed to make time to explain to people before asking questions. Like, okay, let me explain to you what is a data center. I'm not talking only about common people as us, but in some cases, even the authorities in local places are not, when the data center is being developed, the project is being developed between the company and the state government, for example. In some cases, the local authorities in a city don't know about the data center, and you need to make time to explain them. And this is something that is difficult because, as Aramis told before, it's a very complex subject. It's a very technical topic in some cases, and it's difficult to explain. But in the case that I covered for dirty data, it was very interesting to see how like the development of the critical view on the issue, no? Because when I went to the communities for the first time to ask them information, they really wasn't aware about the data center and even not know what the data center is. But after that, I follow the communities and I exchanged message. I went there a second time, and after our publication, a lot of things happen here. Like these people in the communities created a kind of a network. They are discussing it much more actively. There was a visit from the Human Rights Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, to the communities, because they understood that it's important to follow this project and understand the impacts on human rights here. So this also created a kind of awareness. There was much more press coverage with this critical view. This changed completely, because before our publications, it was much more like, as I told before, like a big investment, nice to us. And after that, it changed. A group of parliamentaries created also a commission to follow the projects here in the south of Brazil. So, our reporting really created a lot of awareness about this, including in the communities. This is a very interesting thing to note, and a very good feedback for us, because people are recognizing, the value of journalism. I feel really happy with this outcome.
That's really good to hear. Unfortunately, it does fall on the investigative journalist to report what maybe the state department or government ought to have, but that's why we need you guys. So I think it's clear now Brazil and Peru are vastly different contexts. In Brazil, you've got Scala data centers, this huge AI city being built on flood-safe lands. And Peru, it's more of a cowboy. It sounds like a cowboy type situation with a rapidly growing private sector and zero governmental oversight. Are there any, or if so, what common patterns or lessons that have emerged from your reporting?
Well, I think although the situations are very different, I think they reveal the same underlying pattern. No? Technology is moving faster than governance. So I think it's a fact, no? In Brazil, the debate is about large-scale projects and community consultation. And in Peru, the challenge is that the industry is already growing while there is still no clear regulatory framework or institutional oversight. So I think despite their difference, both cases show why transparency and public oversight need to develop at the same pace as technological investment. No, so I think that's how I see the topic in South America. No?
Yes, I completely agree, Aramís. In fact, in Brazil, we also don't have regulations. Know that there's a lack of regulations. For example, the environmental assessment, doesn't exist a national way to do it. Each state is doing in its, as it wants, and or it's so this is a problem, because usually local governments want the investment, and so they are doing everything they can to get this investment, and this seems to me that, for example, the environmental assessments would be, ignored or facilitate, as we don't have a national rule to make this environmental assessment. And I also think that the other common pattern we have, not only between Peru and Brazil, but all the global south, is that usually it's a relation that we have the natural resources, water, energy. For example, here in Brazil, we have a energy matrix that is 93%, I think, renewable. So, you know, it's something that attracts a lot these companies, these technology companies. They need to, you know, to be green, and they are being invited by the government, saying that, look, we have the natural resources, and the companies are mostly from the north. So we are receiving, and probably we will pay a price in terms of natural resources, and probably the biggest economic impact will not happen here, but in the north. I think this is another standard, not only between Peru and Brazil, but probably all the South countries that are represented here have the same situation.
Right. Yeah, like it sounds like at the end of the day, it comes down to good governance, and a lack of that, the presence of these data centers really just reveals where that governance is lacking. So, which I guess leads me to my next question. Now that you've spent months, maybe close to a year investigating this industry, what would meaningful, like actual regulation or public oversight look like in your countries? And are you seeing any signs that governments are moving in that direction?
Well, I think meaningful regulation starts with clarity. No, governments first need to know where data center operate, which institutions are responsible for overseeing them, and what environmental standards should apply. Only then can you have real transparency and meaningful public oversight. In Peru, I think we are still at a very early stage. The industry is growing, but the regulatory framework hasn't caught up yet. So regulations shouldn't begin after the industry has fully expanded how it's happening now. It should grow alongside it. So, well, let's see what happens with this new government. I don't have really good expectation because they have a line that just want to have the better things for companies, but well, let's see what happens in the next year. So, yeah, that's what I could say about Peru. No?
Yeah, in Brazil, I think we have two different aspects that need to be regulated. No, one is the environmental aspect, because as I told before, the state governments are, you know, deciding how to assess environmentally a data center, and we don't have a national rule for that, and so these last 2 months, I would say, it started a movement, you know, from organizations, public society, asking for this national regulation on the environmental aspects, like what we need to look and what we need to assess to understand the impact of these data centers in the local communities, in the local environment, what we need to understand better to, you know, to accept it or not. This is something that and now there is a kind of a pressure, a public pressure towards the government to establish this national assessment. So this is one side of the thing, and the other one is that Brazil is developing. Brazil has the federal government proposed a bill to offer tax benefits to data centers specifically. And this bill has like some criteria to to exchange. Like Brazil will offer, for example, tax benefits to data centers that are more efficient in the water usage, for example. This is one a criteria that is in this project. And so talking with my sources, people that follow much more, the regulation topic. People told me that this is good. Of course, we need to bring some environmental standards. Like we want this type of data center. Like we need data centers are efficient and all these, parameters. But in fact, the most important information, and in this sense, I completely agree with Aramís, is that we need transparency, because, for example, this specifically topic of water usage efficiency, it's a metric that is used by the industry, and they have like a calculation that is really difficult to follow, like to understand if a data center is efficient or not. It's really, really, really difficult to make this calculation. And this is the criteria that will be used to bring to offer to data centers these tax benefits. And this is impossible for regular people to understand. We don't understand these calculations. We need really deep transparency on the amount of water, for example, that these data centers will use, not if they will use it efficient in an efficient way or not. Like this is important, okay, but what people will understand is the amount of the water, not the percentage of efficiency. I don't know. So I think we need a lot of transparency, and this is not in the bill, in fact, in the bill project. So this would be very important to have more transparency.
First and foremost, just proactive transparency rather than reactive regulations in response to only when there's big population pushback. And for that to happen, there will have to be an environmental impact assessment. And yeah, there is a lot of talk of efficiency here as well. At the same time, like you pointed out, you can efficiently use 2 million liters of water a day. You're still using 2 million liters of water a day.
You muted, Clarissa.
You're mute. Yep.
How much did we hear?
Just 5
Until
seconds.
the 2 million liters per day.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so now we're going to move on to some extra questions that we have. But if anyone has any questions at all, please, you don't even have to put them in your comments anymore. We've moved on to the extra questions. You can just raise your hand and then we'll go to you. Otherwise, no pressure to ask for the sake of asking. So I want to know, was there one moment during your reporting that fundamentally changed how you view the data center industry, for better even, or for worse?
Well, yes, for me, the turning point came when I started receiving responses from the government agencies, no? Because I expected at least one of them to have clear or something oversight of the industry, but instead I found that no institution seemed to have a complete picture of who was actually responsible for regulating data centers in Peru. So in that point, changed the way I saw the story. I realized it wasn't only about technology, but it also was about governance, transparency, and institutional responsibility. You know, so it was like uh, I was going to write about the notes from the government and how this note is being a way to the companies to grow the sector and the industry. So it was important to have this information from the government because I focus on how the companies are interested in not having any regulation in Peru. I don't know if it's going to be the same in the future, but it was like at that point that I see this story had to be in this line or focus in these findings, no? So well, it was my case how it happened.
Well, for me, Clarissa, I would say there were many turning points because actually, it was a very new topic for me reporting on. It was really, like I felt that each day I was discovering something new that I didn't know before. So it was a very interesting, it was challenging, but very interesting to learn, this. And I think as we have a lot of journalists here, I think also I'm not a technology reporter, I never covered technology. And so this, in the first moment, it was like, okay, I don't understand these terms, I don't understand, the technical things. I don't know anything about that. And I probably won't be able to do this. I felt that I wouldn't be uh, able to do the reporting, but in the end, yes, I was. So I think this is something that is interesting to share here. And but about like a moment in during the reporting for our project that it was important for me. It was going to the field and interviewing people in the city that in this municipality where the data center will be built. It's a city, it's a municipality that was flooded in 2024. We had a huge flood here in the south of Brazil during we stayed during 40 days underwater, really underwater. And this region where the data center will be built was the most affected area in the state. And the only place that wasn't hit by the flood is the specifically area where they will build the data center. And to interview people in the field and asking them about their, how is your life and your house, it was affected. And many people told me that they were making the arrangements to move for other city to other places because they wasn't able to purchase a new house in their city because there are not safety places, and the safety places that are too expensive to their capacities. So people are moving to other places from there. And for example, there were cases from families that will need to separate because the mom has a safety house in a safety place, and the son can afford a house there in this place, and the only place that is free of of risks and without houses is the data center area. So this was really impactful for me.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to not be hit by just how uncaring of a move that is, that this place has been hit by floods, devastating up to 80% of the population. There's a tiny amount of land that isn't you know, as flood prone, we're going to give it to the data centers and you're going to have to move 60, is it kilometers or miles out of the city? Yeah, it really, I guess it shows like the opposite of love really isn't hate. It's just complete apathy. And for Aramis, I guess your oh shit moment was like, oh no, nobody knows what's going on. So a few of our audiences, or quite a few of our audiences, do reside outside of Latin America. Was there anything that surprised you that you think they should know?
You want to start, Naira? Or-
Well, no, I think I already told that something that was interesting was this idea that data center is a technology issue and only technology reporters will cover, you know. I would say that is exactly the opposite because reporters, for example, environmental reporters have this eye towards the environmental issues, and this is really important to discuss in this industry. Human rights the same, you know, and regulation, like there's this topic crosses many fields, and as most diverse reporters covering that we the most diverse reporters covering that we have, most good reporting we will have, and most good public debate we will have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I also think audiences outside Latin America should know that the region isn't just consuming AI technologies. We are also providing many of the natural resources and infrastructure that make them possible, no? That means, I think, discussions about AI shouldn't only focus on innovation, but also on environmental governance and transparency. I think it's a main point that we should see also in Latin America and other countries, but it's happening in Latin America uh, as fasting as you can imagine, no? So I think I could say that, no?
To link AI use back to its real world consequences, and Naira to I wonder if it's intentional. You know, there's a lot of obfuscation, there's a lot of like jargon and very fancy ways, as you pointed out, to talk about efficiency. And yes, that is why we need journalists, because there has to be someone to ask the almost obvious question of, yeah, but how much is it going to cost? And anyone can do that. You don't have to be an expert in tech. So final question, for those who are interested in learning more or even taking action and doing something, where would you tell them to begin? Just normal citizens.
Well, I think it's difficult to answer because each country is kind of island. But I think I start with public records. Find out which government agencies are responsible for the sector, ask whether they have regulations, environmental permits, or even oversight responsibility, and don't assume those systems already exist. No, then I'd combine that with field reporting, visit the sites, talk to experts, and compare with what companies publicly say with what official records actually show. No, we can even research the company's websites. Sometimes you can find any information not in our country, but in a country where this company also operates. Probably this company is more transparency in other country, in not in ours, so we can find some findings in that way. So I could start, or we can give you a hand if we prepare uh, a second part of our investigation. No? So if it's linked to Latin America, we could help you. So, well, it's a personal promise, but probably Naira seems the same. But yeah, I could say that, no?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, yes, if someone is trying to, some reporter is trying to enter this topic, and or a regular citizen is interested in understanding better, I would say read the investigations like Dirty Data. There are other very good investigations. And I would say the more or less the same that Aramís told, that is partner with a local reporter, for example, in the place you want to discover things, or partner, like exchange information with other people. I think this is something that's important in this topic. Exchange information with reporters that you trust in, for example, if you are a citizen, or if you are a reporter that is beginning in this path, you can also partner with a more experienced reporter, because there is a path that is being developed. It's very few things that we could cover so far, but we could. And I think there's a big field open to do much more investigations. But I think I always feel like our project was really important for me because I was a beginner in that moment, and to exchange information with other reporters that were, covering this for more time and understanding better, for example, the comparisons, like how big is this data center? Let me check with the other reporters. How big is their data centers? Like to understand better. It's to exchange information, to collaborate with other people. It's really important to understand better, to establish these patterns and these standards. So this helps a lot.
Find the governing bodies, find the profit, which companies are responsible, find the people who are already working on it. Reina, you've got your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Hello. Hello. Thank you for your talk. I'm from the Philippines, and there's this massive project that is called Pac Silica. The government said that they're gonna build data centers and manufacturing companies to process microchips, because we have the resources, just like Brazil. We have the natural resource. We're rich in nickel and ore. And now the signing of the deal will be in November. And I'm part of one of the communities organizations fighting against this project. And I'm wondering how your government handled public clamor, opposition against this data center. How did they handle this if there were any protests? Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Well, in Brazil, I think this movement, the citizen movement, is still starting. They are in the moment they are organizing themselves. Like there are some parts in the north, for example, that indigenous people are much more organized, and they are, public, really, pressuring the governments about data centers. And but mostly part of the country, people are, they are trying to organize. They are in the beginning of the movement. And so I think the governments are still like, okay, this is not a problem so far. The governments are acting like, for example, in Brazil, the federal government choose to defend data centers as a sovereignty, decision. Like, we will handle our own data because we will have data centers here in Brazil, even though the data centers are from, I don't know, Google or other, but it's a kind of, this is the narrative the government is constructing, like we will be sovereign with our data. So this is good. But there is no confrontation, I think, so, so clear, only this in the north of the country, but it's a very, local movement. And the government, the public prosecutor in the north is investigating also. So this is good because it's an authority that is, that took the pains of the citizens and is investigating to understand how to manage this. But it's in a very initial step.
Yeah, and in Peru, as Naira said, indigenous organizations are more organized, and now I didn't find significant public protests specifically related to that data centers. No, I think one reason is that the industry is still relatively unknown to much of the public. And my reporting found that the bigger issue as this stage is the lack of transparency and regulation. And I think before people can debate or protest these projects, they first need access to basic information about where they operate, how they're regulated, and what their environmental impacts might be, no? That may change as the industry grows, but at the moment, the discussion in Peru is still more about transparency and regulation than about public protest. I think this is a photo for now, for today. I don't know if tomorrow or the next year it's going to change, but now I think it's calm. Well, I hope people is going to be more interested in this topic, but now there's no any evidence or something about the discussion that you mentioned right now.
Thank you. Can I just add something? Now in the Philippines, there's already a public clamor because we are looking at the United States. I don't know if you've heard of Erin Brockovich. She's the activist that was portrayed in the film by Julia Roberts. And she's now in the fighting against data centers in the USA. And they have this portal, they have this website where communities are actually they're reporting that their water is like is sewage water. So we are looking at their example, even though we don't know yet. Actually, our government too is not transparent. They're not publishing anything. First, they said that there will be data centers, and then now they're retracting. There will be no data centers, but our bullshit tracker is way too advanced for that. Oh, well, anyway, so we may not know much about data centers in the Philippines, but we're looking at the United States, and there's no, I don't know if you've heard of any good example like environmentally friendly data center, if there's any. So we don't believe in any of their promises. So just that. Thank you.
Yes, I think this is another problem, no? As it's a new topic, and it's a tech subject, no? And this narrative of environmental friendly technology is, always been, like a new step. The old generation of data centers Yes, they used a lot of water, but the new generation, that is the one that is coming to your country, is a new generation, and it doesn't, it don't use a lot of water. You can, you can trust us, and I think this is the point that Aramís repeated many times here, and I think this is the core of the problem. We don't have the transparency enough to we have two options, or trust the companies because this is an information that is disclosed, or it's told, actually it's not disclosed, it's told by the companies, like, okay, we will be environmental friendly, you can trust us, but they do not disclose any information that we could check, for example, verify to understand better what are the parameters they are saying. And or we can investigate, I think, and investigating, we will create this awareness, as Aramís told also before. For example, the north of Brazil, where indigenous people are really fighting against the data center, is a region where a very good reporter here from Intercept Brazil covered, like, she revealed all these plans of these data centers, and because of this work, people could organize themselves. And so I think our role here is clear: is to bring transparency to this project, and and bring the information that people need to think about it, to reflect about it.
Yeah, and just to complete the Naira's idea, and from my reporting in Peru, actually I didn't find evidence that any data center could be described as completely friendly or impact free. Every facility has an environmental footprint because it requires land, energy, and depending on its design, sometimes or most of the times water. So I think the most important question, or one of the most important questions, in my view, isn't whether a data center is good or bad, but whether it's transparent about its impact and operates under clear environmental standard and public oversight, because we don't know how many water they consume, how many energy. You don't find any detail about this information. I mean, talking about the Peruvian companies, but I think any companies, or well, probably not any, but most of them don't publish any about how they consume about water or energy. So I think it could be the first step, a good step if they do that. No, so I think we should focus on that, not if they are friendly, because you know what the greenwashing do, and other industries in different sectors do the same. So probably this sector is going to do as well if we don't ask for transparency, no?
Yeah, those are some really good answers. Instead of going into good and bad, ask for the details specifically. What makes you say that? If you want to end on like a hopeful note, in Malaysia, in Petaling Jaya, we had a data center that was planned, some land that was gazetted off, and 7 days were given. The local population only found out on the 6th day. There was huge public protest. People got into their resident committees, and I think this is crucial, going back to the land that you personally are on, got organized, and eventually the consultant pulled out. Of course, the conditions are still there. The decision can still be reversed. But for now, it's a sign that these things do work, especially once we get organized. If there are no other questions, then may I kindly direct your attention to the link that my colleague Baoyun has so kindly placed in the chat. And if you have 5 minutes to just fill it in, let us know how your experience was so we can improve these sessions the next time. That would be fantastic. If anyone who's interested, the links to our website, dirtydata.earth, as well as Naira's story and Aramís's story are also in the chat. If you missed it, that's okay. We'll be sending up a follow-up email with their emails so you can get in touch, as well as those links. Yes, thank you, Darshini. And in the chat is also the story of the withdrawal of that data center plan following the pushback. Give you a second to click on the links, get what you need, fill in the survey. And I'll close the room in about 3 minutes or 2. Otherwise, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Naira. Thank you, Aramís. Thank you, Baoyan and Chantal. And thank you, everyone, for being here and listening and for your wonderful question.
Thank you, guys, and let's be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.